I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. You're so incredibly smart. It's also the name of the show. Welcome in, everybody. I hope you're having a great day. Hope you're having a wonderful, what is it? A wonderful Wednesday. It is a wonderful Wednesday today. I lost track of the days. I'm not concussed or anything. I fell while shoveling ice out front today. I did. And I know that it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I don't expect flowers or sympathy. And at the risk of turning this into a much bigger thing than it needs to be, I will also point out I don't need anybody to send cannoli to my house. You might have seen this yesterday. You also might have missed it. But yesterday I received a package that I did not expect to receive. That actually sounds really bad. I shouldn't say it like that. Yesterday, I went to my front door and there was a delivery guy standing at the front door. Now, mind you, I did not clear the front step since the snow. And so I wouldn't expect anybody to show up at my house with a delivery. But good old friend of the program and friend of Snow the Goalie, Tony Escargot, over on Twitter, sent me a tweet, or he tweeted at me yesterday and said, hey, just so you know, because I put out a thing about how the Flyers need to, change a few things. Tony Escargot tweeted the following: as a show of faith to the only man in the Flyers press that questions the front office and the direction of this team, Tony Escargot has sent Joy on Broad to cannoli. Russ, they'll be at your house between 12:55 and 1:05 p.m. Please confirm with photos once cannoli have landed. And I thought, surely that's a joke. It wasn't, because he then sent me a follow-up from Rocco's Pizza in Phoenixville, at which point I said, oh man, I have lots of questions, but okay. And then, believe it or not, cannoli showed up to my house. So cannoli came from Grubhub. Now I have to tell you, a very kind gesture by Tony Escargot, friend of the program. I will simply point out, though, that if you ever feel so moved by the Holy Spirit to send cannoli to my house, we should probably better think out whether or not there has been a snowstorm or not. Because when the guy showed up to my house, you have to remember, this delivery guy probably thought, this Russ Joy guy is a total asshole. Who orders 2 cannoli in the middle of the day in the midst of, the roads around here still aren't that great? I got to the front door. I opened the front door. I looked at the delivery driver, and I started to try to articulate to him, hey, just so you know, I'm not the ass. I didn't order this. I'm really sorry that you got dragged out of the store. I'm sorry. This wasn't me. And then I realized that if I went out of my way to explain to this guy, hey, there's a Twitter account out there named Tony Escargot who felt moved by the Spirit to order me cannoli to my house, the guy probably would have thought that I was on meth or something. So I stopped myself from going further into the explanation, and I simply said thank you. Now, did Tony tip? I have no idea. I hope Tony did tip, because the driving conditions yesterday weren't great. All this is to say, in this very weird world that we live in, I somehow now have somebody who has decided to send cannoli to my house. I have not yet eaten the cannoli, but I will, and I thank Tony Escargot for the cannoli. Now, I have other things to be thankful for today. Most notably, did you watch those Philadelphia 76ers on Tuesday night? If you did, you'll understand why I look so happy, so joyful, so gleeful today. Because we have to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. We will also talk about the Philadelphia Flyers, who are about to play their 5,000th game. Yes, that is correct. You heard me correctly. Their 5,000th game between the regular season and postseason included. 5,000 games. We're going to be diving into that later tonight on Snow the Goalie. If you're in the general Malvern area around 6 o'clock tonight, come out to the Chickies and Pete's in Malvern, Pennsylvania. It's a great location, great spot. Ant and I will be out there. We may have a guest on. Our Phantoms guest that we were supposed to have, because of the snow, things got adjusted a little bit. There is somebody who may be coming on the show. We are waiting on double, triple verification. It'll either be me and Ant, or it'll be me, Ant, and somebody else who's very prominent in the media space around the Philadelphia Flyers. So that's all I can tell you for right now. And if this person is going to confirm, we'll put it out on the Twitter as well. But we will talk about the Flyers, because they got shellacked, mollywopped, boat raced by the Islanders on home ice, coming off of an impressive 7-3 win in Colorado. They puked all over themselves. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. We also have to have a little conversation about Bill Belichick, who somehow did not get elected as a first ballot Hall of Famer. We'll talk about that and the apparently very petty Bill Polian. And I never thought I was going to come on the show and defend Bill Belichick, but I might have to at some point. We'll also cover whether or not the Sixers should be interested in Giannis Antetokounmpo, who came out today. Shams Charania put out. Apparently he is now not just open to the idea of a trade, but maybe is actually hoping to be dealt from Milwaukee. The same Giannis who only mere days ago said that he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with yet another calf injury. Seems like a bold thing to then want to be dealt, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. And by the way, Christopher Sanchez is apparently going to pitch at the World Baseball Classic, so we'll get to that. I also have just a general question that I'm going to throw to the people, and you weigh in at some point here. Are the Phillies a better team? Because I saw a tweet that pitchers and catchers report in 2 weeks, and I said, please no. Please, God, no. 2 weeks, pitchers and catchers report, and I have gone back and forth with somebody who will remain nameless, Anthony Sanfilippo, and I said, hey, I think the Phillies are pretty clearly worse going into this season than they were last year, and he told me I'm an idiot and I don't understand baseball. So I'm going to throw out to all of you who are not idiots whether or not you think the Phillies are a better or worse team now than they were this time last year. We have so much to get into, and we actually have a good bit of time to do some stuff today, so we'll dive into all of this, and maybe even more. Who knows? Who's to say? I can make no promises. Well, I could make promises, but I like to not break my promises. So we'll get into all of those different things. We'll probably I think we'll probably go Sixers, Flyers, Belichick, Phillies, something like that. So let's get into it. Now, I'm going to go out to the comments here really quick, and then we're going to move on. I don't know if you've noticed, I've reorganized the desk a little bit here because I felt like so much stuff gets hidden behind here where the comments are. So I didn't show this the other day, but I picked this up in Barcelona. I got the Sagrada Familia, and I say that with the English accent, not Sagrada Familia. I picked up this thing, which is very big. Usually I go with the smaller ones, like the CN Tower in Toronto, or I've got I think this one is Hatteras, or is this Currituck? This one's the Currituck Lighthouse in Outer Banks. I don't know what made me feel so moved by the Holy Spirit to grab such a big Sagrada Familia, but I did. So that's now added to the desk. Everything else I think is just kind of shifted over. I have this whole idea in my mind of how to set this desk up even better and have more things on it, but we'll see. How committed am I to doing it? I don't know. I also have the Barcelona mug here, as many of you are aware. I like to buy the Starbucks mug from wherever I go, so I've got the Barcelona mug. What I did notice, and it was way after the fact, is that this is a glossy finish, and usually they're a matte finish. So now this one stands in stark contrast to a lot of the other ones. I don't know how to feel about it. I think I'm okay with it, but I'm not positive. Okay. We're going to go over to the comments. Let's see what's going on. Chris Freed says, did the Hall of Fame voters give Belichick the shaft? We're going to get there in a little bit. Nick Abe says, oh, baby, we hear. And says, my GOAT, Connor McDavid, has 92 points in 54 games. I think he's a good player. I'm pretty sure Connor McDavid is a good hockey player. I just need somebody to confirm that he is very good. Chris Freed says, I'm going Posidelphia, and I'm going to say the Flyers win their 5,000th franchise game tonight in regulation. Wow. Bold. Okay. Chris goes, did the cold freeze Russ, or is he watching the Challenger accident over and over again? Nope. No. When I fell on the ice today, I couldn't believe it. This was a picturesque, feet up over the head kind of fall. I went to go shovel out the front step. I took 2 steps on my walkway that also were not shoveled, and it was just ice over top of a little bit of snow, and I went full feet up, and I landed on my left hip, which has been giving me trouble now for a while because apparently I'm an old man. So, here we are. All right. Let's see. Bondarenko's here. Says, good afternoon. Hello. Amadeo asks, you got rock bottomed? I did not get rock bottomed, but it did feel kind of close to getting rock bottomed on the ice. Let's see. Ford says the Flyers suck and says Sixers are an up and down team and will be all season. The Hornets loss is ridiculous. Note that Ford talks about the Hornets loss, does not talk about the shellacking that the Sixers gave to the Bucks and to Glenn Rivers on their home court last night. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Let's see. Ford says cannolis. There's an S. No, if you're Italian deprived, or if you just have no concept of the Italian language, then you would add an S. Cannoli, as I think we've covered on the show before, is plural. In Italian, masculine nouns take an I as their plural form. The singular ends with an O. So a cannolo would be a single cannoli, and then cannoli is plural. Same thing as ravioli. Ravioli equates to multiple raviolos, right? Raviolo is one, ravioli is multiple. You don't put an S. I find that actually pretty upsetting, to be honest with you. Okay. Jim Cochran is here, says Sixers better not trade away their youth for Giannis. We'll get there in a little bit. Wyatt's Hot Take says Belichick did not get first ballot because Goodell is a terrorist. We'll talk about Belichick here in a second. Nick Abe thinks that Golden State is going to get Giannis. We'll see. There's a non-zero chance of that. There was two interesting trades have already come up. One has to do with Golden State, and I saw a thing about the Knicks maybe making two moves, moving both Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns in separate moves. We'll try to get there a little bit as well. At the Helm Outdoors asks, is one goal tonight too much to ask for? I have a feeling that the Flyers will score more than one goal tonight. Will they win the game? I don't know. All right. I might try to jump through some of these other ones. We'll go back and forth. This is also nonsense. Ford says cannolis is accepted as a plural in the English language. Just confirm that, so both are true. Now that's stupid. That's a double pluralization. We don't recognize double pluralizations here on the Russ Joy Show. I think it's dumb. So I refuse to acknowledge that. Okay, cool. Now, let's have a conversation about your team, your town, of Philadelphia 76ers, who on Tuesday night did a damn good job of showing you what this thing looks like when everything is humming all at the same time. We got to finally see on Tuesday night what this thing could theoretically look like in a playoff series if everyone is healthy, if everyone is available. And I know it's a massive caveat, and I know it feels like a broken record to say it again and again. But man, Joel Embiid looks so much better physically than he did early this season. He looks as good as he has looked in, 4 or 5 seasons. He physically might not have the explosiveness that he did 5 years ago or during his MVP season, but man, he looks so much better. He had an alley-oop last night. After the game, he was asked about it, and he was like, I'm not real good with the alley-oops, but I got up there. And it was like, that was great. Good job, Joel. Good job. Alley-oop from Maxey. Maxey was like absolutely elated seeing the big man fly up, soar over the opposition, and finish an alley-oop. It was a good moment. This is the whole thing, is that like in the midst of Embiid going through this real roller coaster of emotions the last few years, Maxey going to the next level and Maxey becoming a legitimate standout star player who has that infectious positivity, it really does kind of help take your mind off of Embiid and everything that you need Embiid to be for this team to be the best version of itself. And there's this beautiful moment in the game where Maxey to Embiid, you get the alley-oop, everybody's feeling great about it. And Maxey's like a kid in a candy store. Maxey is absolutely thrilled. And that kind of joyful exuberance is the thing that you look for as a fan. And post-game, he was quoted as saying, he was asked post-game, I think it was by NBC Sports. They asked, when's the last time you saw that from Joel? And I think we should be able, we're not going to play the video, but we'll play the audio. I think we should be okay to play the audio. If not, YouTube needs to kind of like rein in the negativity, we'll call it. But let's go over here really quick to Tyrese Maxey. This is Maxey post-game on Embiid. I think I have to, let's see, can I do this? We'll do this. We'll do this, and then we'll do this. All right, here we go. This is Maxey post-game about the lob to Joel Embiid.
I got to go back to Joel, though. 24 points in the first half. The alley-oop, when's the last time you saw that from him?
My second year, 4 years ago. That was, I told him before the game I was going to throw him a lob, so that was kind of cool.
It's a really cool moment. I know that it doesn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, who cares? It's an alley-oop. If you are in a totally different market, you probably look at it and say, this is genuinely stupid. Why is this jamoke talking about an alley-oop as if the Sixers won the NBA Finals? It's about what it means to the player, what it means to the team as a whole. Embiid physically looks so much better than he did early in the season and the past few. he even said post-game, he was interviewed about it, and he said that this is the best he's felt in a really long time, and that you don't take these games for granted. And so there's part of me that feels like there's a maturity that has definitely happened with Embiid. And I think people have seen this since he became a dad. There's been like an uptick in maturity. But I think that having his career essentially threatened now multiple seasons, where his season is cut short, there are legitimate questions about whether or not he's ever going to be able to play basketball at the same level or even close to the same level. When you have that kind of taken away from you, when you have your potential basketball future taken away from you, I think it does change things if you're a player. And in the case of Embiid, you can tell that he's grateful that he's feeling as good as he does physically. And I get it. He didn't play against the Hornets, and Hornets game was a total disaster class. But against a Bucks team that is missing Giannis and is still a relatively competent team, all things considered without Giannis, to go out and have the kind of game that Embiid did is huge. But it wasn't just Embiid. It wasn't. Like on Tuesday night, we didn't just see Joel Embiid go out and dominate the Bucks. I mean, he did. I mean, the first half from Joel Embiid was incredible. I think he had 22 points at the break. Overall, on the night, he finishes with 29 points. Yeah, it was 22 points at halftime. He played a sensational game. 29 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. He had a steal in there as well. Embiid looked like Embiid. But that wasn't the guy, interestingly enough, who stood out the most. And it also wasn't Tyrese Maxey, who had 22 points of his own, shot 9 of 19 from the field. No, not Tyrese. Maxey struggled from beyond the arc, only 2 of 8. But it was Paul George. And there's part of you that, even if you are a Sixers skeptic, has to sit back and just take a real quick look at how Paul George was able to take over the game late in the second half, put the team on his back multiple possessions in a row, and just drain 3 after 3 after 3. Now, he had a heat check from like the inside, like the left hash, and he missed that one. So yeah, you got to do a heat check if you're Paul George. 32 points on the night. Shot 9 of 15 from beyond the arc. 9 of 15 from beyond the arc. You want to know how good Paul George was feeling? 15 three-point attempts. Hit 9 of them. Good on him. Had 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals to go along with it. And I will point out the same thing that I've largely pointed to this season when he is in the lineup. Even when you get to the end of a game and you look at the box score and you say, all right, Paul George had 9 points or had 11 points and didn't shoot the lights out. His defense is where I think you see a very consistent player. Yes, night in and night out, his shot attempts are going to vary. His rebounding is essentially going to remain about the same. His playmaking ability, his assists that he's able to put up, that'll remain relatively consistent. But his defensive play, deflections, steals, are just a couple of metrics that you could take a look at. But Paul George looks like he is continuing to get better and better and better and settle into the season as well. Now, one of the beautiful things that you saw last night, Paul George in a spot-up situation. Paul George in a catch-and-shoot situation, doing what he needs to do. But the other element to this is the thing that we've long talked about. Paul George at his size can handle almost as well as just about any guard in the league. This was always a thing that was, massive when he first started in the league with Indiana. You would look at a guy of his size, and his handle was significantly better than forwards his size. Now, I'm not saying that Paul George has the handle of Kyrie Irving, right? That would be lunacy. But Paul George has more than enough ability to initiate the offense. He has more than enough ability to beat a defender on the ball. Paul George has the ability right now, even on Tuesday night, you saw it, the ability to slash if he wants, the ability to throw a defender off balance, step back, pop a 3 in his face, hit a mid-range jumper. Paul George looked exactly like what I'm sure Daryl Morey expected to get, was hoping to get out of Paul George. And remember, the guy has figured out a way to sort of settle into a role. Now, admittedly, in the second half, he had a moment where you could tell he wanted to take over the game. Hence, his shot attempts were up. Hence, he had the second most shots on the team all night. You can roll with that. You can. You can absolutely give Paul George a little bit of extra runway to find a scoring touch. And he did. For as great as Embiid was in the first half, I would argue Paul George was as good or better in the second half. That is the beauty of having those two guys in the lineup. Now, do I think that there's a scenario here where you are going to see a Sixers team make it into the playoffs and you're going to see a steady dose of Maxey, George, and Embiid all pacing relatively the same throughout the entire course of a game? No. I do think that what you will see is moments in games where Embiid will take over. You will see moments, hopefully like last night, where Paul George will take over. And then, of course, Maxey will be the one guy who really is the consistent for this team throughout the game, just because the ball's in his hands more than anybody else's, because of his ability to get to the rim whenever he wants, his ability to hit a spot up three, all that's great. Now, you want other positives, I can give you other positives. We talked, it was either on Monday or it was last week, about Jared McCain, and that McCain was getting sent down and that he hadn't been able to find his shooting touch. He had some extended minutes against Charlotte, where it felt like maybe things were starting to get a little bit better. McCain last night played 24 minutes. He shot 6 of 8 from the field, including 5 of 6 from behind the arc. 5 makes on 6 attempts from downtown. If Jared McCain is going to be a piece of this puzzle going forward, which obviously the Sixers hope he will be, that's it. He had multiple catch and shoot opportunities last night. From the wing, I think a couple from the corner. McCain looked really good. He even had a few moments where he was able to slash to the hoop. Now, the explosiveness and the quick twitch of it all that McCain had last year, that still has not returned yet. I don't know if it will this year. I think he's stylistically got to play a little bit differently this year. I think that a full offseason of health and conditioning, next year I would expect him to look more like the rookie year Jared McCain. But man, if you can have a guy who can give you 20 plus minutes off the bench, and maybe doesn't give you 17 points on 5 or 6 from beyond the arc, but like a guy who can come in, hit 3-4 threes on like 6-7 attempts, you feel pretty good about it. That's a valuable piece. That's a useful piece. And if that conditioning gets a little bit better, Jared McCain as a ball handler off the bench, not the worst option in the world. I will also point out that Bona last night had 2 blocks, both of which looked like they erased the existence of the opposition. He had 1 block where he was fully extended. I forget who the player was from the Bucks who went up for a layup. And the hand is coming up and the ball is just about to leave his hand, right? About shoulder height. And Bona already has his arm fully extended and he's got like a fingertip to the ball before the guy can even release it. I mean, like, eviscerated this guy. Wiped his existence off the map. It was incredible. You put all that together, and you look at last night, and you see like VJ Edgecombe didn't have like a massive game, but Edgecombe went 3 for 3 on his attempts from beyond the arc and had 12 points on the night, had 8 rebounds and 7 assists and a steal and 2 blocks. And you go, yo, VJ Edgecombe, a nice game out of the rookie. You're not going to expect VJ Edgecombe to be a 25 point per game producer each and every night. But his ability to play off of Paul George, his ability to play off of Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, he's a perfect fit with those guys. I got to tell you, when Maxey threw the lob to Embiid and they're running back down the court, you see Paul George in the frame, you see VJ Edgecombe in the frame. And it reminded me of that picture earlier in the season when the 4 of them, I think it was Maxey, was the one who put it on Instagram of the 4 of them on the court together. And like, I think if we're all honest and if we're being fair, this is maybe the best group of 4 the Sixers have had in a really long time. I mean, the best comp, I guess, would be when you had Simmons playing at a high level. You had Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler, and Tobias Harris. Those 4. That was a good 4. Now, I was never high on Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons certainly had his shortcomings. There's an argument to be made that this group of 4 might be the best group of 4 when they're all available. Is this the best 4-pack of players to take the court for the Sixers this decade? Is there a group that was better than this? All right, like even if you wanted to say, hey, take Tobias Harris out and it's Simmons, Embiid, Jimmy Butler, and JJ Redick, you could probably try to do that. Is that group better? Maybe. Like, maybe that's your closest comp. You guys let me know in the comments. So I would like to know. I'm very interested. Big win. 17-point win at home by your team, your town, your Philadelphia 76ers. Good to see. I'll go out to the comments. I see Ford's commenting a lot, so I assume he's taking a pee in the Cheerios of the Sixers game last night. That would be my guess. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be proven right. I'm almost positive that's what's going to be. Oh, here we go. You can't get too excited about a Bucks win, dude. Did you forget the Hornets loss? Up and down team. I can get excited about a win over the Bucks. That Hornets loss was weird. 3:00 game on a Monday. Odd. Sixers no-showed. Embiid wasn't there. It was a bad game. Maxey didn't have a good game. It was just a bad game. Sometimes you just throw the film out. Chris Freed asks, what photos does Doc Rivers have that enables him to coach in the NBA? I don't know. I really don't know. Doc's in a weird spot, too, because Doc actually came out and said Embiid is the most talented player he's ever coached. So then, you immediately start thinking, all right, Doc coached. Did he coach Kawhi with the Clippers? I honestly don't remember. No, Doc was there when Chris Paul was there and Blake Griffin. He coached Paul Pierce. He coached Kevin Garnett. Now, it wasn't the peak Kevin Garnett that played for the Timberwolves. That's over on this poster down here. Can't really see him behind the mic stand. There he is. Coached Ray Allen. He currently coaches Giannis, who apparently now wants out. I thought it was really interesting that he said Embiid is the most talented player he's ever coached. I didn't know what to make of that. I thought it was very, very interesting. Let's see. Jim Cochran says Embiid looks great. About time for another broken cheek or something. Well, hopefully not. It would feel really good to see this get better. All right. Let's see. Nick Abe says every team has games like the one against the Hornets. I mean, it was bad. It was a really, really bad team, but Chris goes, the Bucks are 18-27. You call that competent? Do you work for the city and snow removal as well? By the way, the city, I have not been down into Philly since the storm. I have gotten reports that the city is a total disaster class. There's a clip going around of this older lady. We're going to call her an older lady. We're going to call her an experienced lady. She has plenty of experience in her life. She's not young. She's not 20. I think she looked like she was probably in her late 50s, early 60s. And she was complaining about how their street hadn't been plowed. And the guy's sitting there. The snowplow's sitting there. She's complaining about it. And then he drives by and she's like, thank you. And then she takes a shot at Mayor Sherelle Parker. She's like, what did she say? Tell Mayor Parker to take her wig off and come out and shovel and help the people of her city. I was like, oh my gosh. We're doing wig shots now? Woof. Woof. All right. Ford says, here's the nuanced truth. The Sixers at times look good, and at other times, I wonder about Nick Nurse and the team's motivation. It's weird, but it's true. In the East, they will make the playoffs. I'm not sold on Nick Nurse as a coach. I do want to be really, really fair there. I am not a big believer in Nick Nurse. I don't think he's nearly the coach that some people thought he was. I think that anytime you have prime Kawhi Leonard, it helps a lot. I'm not exactly sure that he's an inspiration to the guys on the bench. Make of that what you will. Christopher Ward says, great to see Jared McCain have a productive night as well. I agree. It was good. Let's see. I see some stuff coming in about the Flyers. We'll get there in a second. Chris says Sixers are on pace to win 44 or 45 games. Russ is harping like they're winning 70 this season. I just want to have something nice to hold on to, especially when the other team that plays in the building looks like they're about to fall apart. B. Condor says it's by far the deepest roster they've had in the Embiid era. I think that is actually true. I do. All right. I think we're going to go. Let's flip over to the Flyers. I got to play something for you that I said over on So the Goalie the other day. You know how much I love doing the Russception, right? The Russ Inception stuff. Oh, real quick, before we go over there real quick. I don't know if you guys had the chance to see this. Slam, Slam Magazine, they put this out. We got some images here. This is the last Sixers thing before we flip to the Flyers. I started going to the Flyers, and I forgot. I had this pulled up. I'm going to show you anyway. So Slam has this out. Times like this. You got VJ Edgecombe, and you have Tyrese Maxey together. I think this is a different cover that's just Maxey, Poetry in Motion, and then one of Edgecombe straight to it. You want to talk about why it's such an important thing to have young guys that you can kind of lean on? While everybody's getting themselves kind of worked up about can Embiid stay healthy, can Paul George stay healthy, the one thing that's odd and interesting and also nice about the Sixers team is you do have that old guard, and Embiid is averaging, I think, 33, 34 points per game in his last 5 games. You see Embiid and Paul George take over a game like last night, but then you know that you've always got Maxey and you've got Edgecombe. It's actually part of why I don't think that the Sixers should be in any way, shape, or form interested in Giannis. I forgot to bring this up. This is actually a somewhat related thing, so just really quick. I mentioned the Shams tweet earlier. And if you're an NBA fan, if you're a Sixers fan, like a few years ago, hearing that Giannis was going to be available would have been like an immediate, oh, hell yeah, like what do we have to do? What do you have to trade? You wouldn't want to trade Tyrese Maxey, but other than that, you'd be willing to trade just about anything else. Shams put this out earlier. 2-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo is ready for a new home at the February 5th trade deadline or in the offseason as several rival teams make aggressive offers to the Milwaukee Bucks for him, and the franchise is starting to listen. Let's be clear about something. The Bucks have been listening the entire time. Anytime you have a good player, a great player, any kind of player of value, you're always listening. You might not have any interest in trading that player, but you would be doing organizational malpractice not to listen. I think it's very clear that, Giannis is ready to leave Milwaukee. I think the second that Dame tore his Achilles and the Bucks essentially bought him out to just go off and sign wherever he wanted, he ultimately went back to Portland. I think Giannis was done. I think Giannis also saw the writing on the wall. There is no viable path to him winning another title with the Bucks. Where does he end up? I don't know. Could he end up with the Knicks? Maybe. Seems like that's where he's wanted to go. They have plenty of capital in terms of players that they could look to move, and maybe some picks or pick swaps can get a deal done. But if I'm the Sixers and I'm looking at Giannis, and Giannis is out with another calf injury, the number one thing that goes off in my head is what have we seen the past 18 months? A guy tweaks a calf, comes back too early, and then, class, what does he do? Ruptures his Achilles. Giannis ruled himself out 4 to 6 weeks. He said himself that he thinks he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. And then, a day or two later, we find out, Giannis is actually open to being traded. Yo, I got to pump the brakes. If you're a Sixers fan out there and you're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, Sixers, get in on it. I put a thing out earlier today. I was like, if I were the Sixers, I would not be interested. I wouldn't. Because it's going to cost you VJ Edgecombe. That is not worth it in any way. It's not. I get it. Giannis, multiple-time MVP, a guy who's won an NBA title, a guy who can take over a game. In theory, you should be all in on that. He's only 31. It's not like he's 34. I get it. I wouldn't trade VJ Edgecombe. What's the value? You trade Edgecombe and Paul George and maybe a pick or two to go get Giannis. We talked about the Bill Simmons proposal the other day. I would not do that. I don't see the value in doing it. I don't see the value of making that trade. Giannis and Embiid have some redundancies in terms of where they like to be on the court. I would not make that move. If you had a way to ship off Paul, if the trade was Paul George, Jared McCain, and some picks, all right, well, maybe that's a conversation. Does it excite you to think about Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Giannis, and Embiid together? Well, yeah. Is Giannis a better player overall than Paul George? Yes. Of course, I think Paul George would probably admit that Giannis is a better player. But I don't see any scenario where Jared McCain, Paul George, and some picks get you Giannis. I don't see that. And if that's the case, not happening. No, thank you. I'm way too high on VJ Edgecombe. You need to have that fallback in case things do go sideways with Embiid and Paul George, that you have that backcourt of the future for a decade That's what you have in Maxey and Edgecombe. You don't just blow that up in the hopes of like going after the Eastern Conference in a down year for the conference overall. If you didn't have a buzzsaw coming out of the Western Conference, maybe it's a different conversation. I would not make that move right now. Okay. Now I'm done on basketball. Back to the Flyers. I had to put something out on Twitter because I put this out over on Snow the Goalie post-game the other night. Said it on Monday night. Flyers were coming off of a 7-3 win over the Colorado Avalanche. It was only the second regulation loss at home that the Avalanche suffered. So if you're the Flyers, you clearly have to build off that. They went 2-0-1. They had 5 points on the road trip, and they should be feeling really good about it. And you, again, just laid a biblical beatdown on the Colorado Avalanche. And so you came back, you came home. Islanders. If the Flyers had beaten the Islanders on Monday, they'd be level on points because they have a game in hand. They would actually be up. They would be in the playoffs because of point percentage. And instead, the Flyers didn't do that. Not only did they not win, they practically no-showed on Monday night. It was an embarrassing performance across the board. Now, I know that people like to get on Sam Ersson. I have certainly gotten on Sam Ersson this season. The first goal of the game. First goal. Puck gets dumped in. It's a foot race. 2 Flyers in the vicinity. Do nothing. They do not bust their ass getting back. There's a wide open player in the slot. Buries it past Ersson. Not Ersson's fault. And by the way, the Flyers had just gone on the power play. So it was a shorthanded goal where a lack of hustle cost them a goal. And honestly, the second that goal was scored, I said, this feels done. This feels like one of those games where you give up a really bad, stupid goal in the first period. And if that is going to be indicative of how the remaining 40 minutes in the game were going to go, they had no shot at coming back. Well, surprise, surprise, they didn't come back. They got embarrassed on their home ice. And while the Islanders are a good team, I wouldn't say that they are a great team. I wouldn't say that the Islanders are a threat to win the Stanley Cup this year, nor the Flyers. But you can't lose 4-0 on your home ice after a successful road trip and a big win against Colorado. So I went on Snow the Goalie postgame, and I had a moment. I always tell you guys, I am nothing if not fair. I try to be honest and forthright how I feel about these teams, how I feel about the Flyers, how I feel about the Sixers and the Phillies and the Eagles and the Union and everyone else. I admitted that I think I was wrong. And maybe I won't be wrong, but on Monday night, I decided to bare my soul a little bit. So we're going to go Russception here. We're going to have two of me, because apparently one isn't bad enough. We'll have 2 of me here for a second, because this, I think, will kind of set up where we need to go on the show today. All right, let's see. You're going to get to see. Now, if it's 2 5-heads on the screen at the same time, does that make it a 10-head? Good question. We should find that answer out soon. This is what I said post-game after the Flyers got whooped by the Islanders. Let's go over here.
I'm actually kind of mad at myself.
Well, for what?
I fell into the trap for 41 games. I genuinely thought that this team had figured out a way to get over the inconsistent hump.
Well,
and that they were poised to make like not a legitimate playoff run, but like certainly to be very much in the mix and not on a collision course with a hockey purgatory. I thought we were past that.
Well, there was
this last few weeks. Thank God I was in Europe and I wasn't plugged into it, because I think I would have lost my mind fully. But to look at it now, to listen to the conversation we're having, I'm getting PTSD to the Dave Hackstall days, the Elaine Vigneault days, to some of the Torts days.
I won't go back that far.
I'm over it. They got to figure it out, and by the way, you have to figure it out soon. You got to figure it out one way or the other. This cannot be a repeat of 2 years ago, where you're going down to the last 2 weeks of the season and then you fall off, and now you're back to picking at 14. That can't be it. You got to go one way or the other. And if it's going to fall apart, it needs to fall apart, and you got to figure it out. If you're Danny Briere, are you going to let it free fall? And maybe you do. Are you going to try to make a couple of moves? I don't know what that looks like. I don't think it's highly advisable, nor do I think he would. Or are you going to lean on these vets? Bundy, this is the thing that I get frustrated with. It's the same core. You said it yourself. It's the same core. It's a lot of the guys at the top that are the highest paid players that are expected to do better than this. At some point, they've got to get over this wild inconsistency. Grow the hell up. You're not 24 anymore. You don't have Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek and Wayne Simmons kind of taking some of the shots for you. Like, it's time to put up or shut up. I don't know who's going to be the one to like stand in that locker room and get these guys back on track. And it maybe seems a little bit overreactionary after a successful road trip. But man, a night like tonight takes all of the good feeling and all of the goodwill that I think they earned from the fans over the weekend. I think tonight just kind of wipes it out.
Yep. I agree.
I thought about it since Monday night. And I did. I was like, did I go too hard on the Flyers? Was I overreactionary because it was their first game back and they were just coming off a huge win over Colorado? And was I being unfair? And so I thought about it. I pondered it in my mind. And here's where I landed. Absolutely not. It wasn't wrong. I didn't go too hard after them. I could have gone harder after them. In fact, I might have actually pulled a couple of punches in what I said. This is an embarrassing display. Monday's game was a flat-out embarrassment. And this is where I get frustrated because my dear friend Anthony, lovely guy. We're pals. I was the officiant of his wedding. Great guy. He's wrong. And I don't have a way to put it other than this. A lot of the people who are trying to make excuses for this Flyers team and are actively trying to kind of like make that case, make that pitch that, you know what, the Flyers just need to add here. They just need to make a move here, or, they could still get back into this thing. They can really make a push for playoffs. A lot of those people are the same ones who have been covering this team through a largely mediocre period for over a decade. This shit doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. We are having the same conversation that we've been having for the better part of 8 years on Snow the Goalie. Like, I swear, if you know me and if you've been keeping up with me for years, I am not the biggest believer in like Claude Giroux, the leader in the locker room, was not the biggest Jake Voracek guy. Loved Wayne Simmons. Wayne Simmons is a great dude. I'm willing to admit those guys, while leadership qualities may have varied depending on who you talk to, those guys aren't walking through the door. And it feels like the premium, and I'm going to put in quotes and italicize and bold and underline, premium, because I don't think they are premium, but the premium players on this team, they are not good enough. There is no way to try to spin that those guys are good enough players for a cup contending team. I would even make the case they are certainly not good enough to be the top players on a team that wins the first round comfortably or finishes in the top half of the Eastern Conference. They're not. They just aren't. Anybody who tries to sell you on the notion that Travis Konechny and Travis Sanheim can be the cornerstone pieces of a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference that can win a first round and have a really competitive second round series, they are fucking selling you snake oil. That ain't real. It's not true. Now, I try quite often to allow a little bit of grace because there are certain things that are in the control of a front office and certain things that are out of control of a front office. I said at the time, I like Travis Konechny, the human being. I think Travis Konechny as a player is a good player. He's a good player. I don't think he's a top line guy on a cup contending team. He's definitely a top 6 forward. He's a good player, but he's not your best player. He's not close to being your best player or being the best player on one of those teams. He doesn't score enough goals. He certainly has some playmaking ability. He does put up a requisite amount of points where you go, all right, I think he's right now on pace for around 80 points, I think, give or take. And in a lot of seasons, you go, for the player that Travis Konechny is, 80 points is good. I was very vocal about the fact when the Flyers were kind of going back and forth, do we re-sign, do we extend, or do we trade? I was very much in the camp. Thank you for what you've done for the organization. Thank you for what you've done for this team. But it is time to jettison you to another team. It is time to move off of that guy, get back some quality assets, whether it's picks, whether it's young players, that can also become part of a larger trade for an even better player. That, to me, has been the biggest miss. I can look at things objectively, and I can say Danny Briere did a wonderful job this offseason identifying Dan Vladar, who for the season has been a legitimate number one goalie, which no one saw coming. Christian Dvorak, you might not like the extension, but Christian Dvorak has worked out very well with this team. There were moves that he's made. There you go, Danny Briere did a good job in the offseason. But he didn't trade Travis Konechny. That would have been a tear it down to the studs kind of move. Now, the Flyers did try to trade Travis Sanheim. They did. And Torrey Krug said no. And so Sanheim remained. I still think Sanheim can be a top pair defenseman. I think that even on a cup contending team, Sanheim can be a top pair defenseman. He's just your number two. He's not a number one defenseman. He's not a bona fide build it around him number one defenseman. I think he can be a top pair guy. I think he is. I think he's playing too many minutes. I think that's probably fair. Sanheim is being relied on too much. He's being relied on too much, just like how Ivan Provorov, when he was here, was being relied on to play too many minutes. Does that speak to the lack of defensive depth with this team? Maybe. It could. But the top-end guys, the ones who are getting paid the most money, are not good enough. And they have not played good enough. Sean Couturier, you will not hear me. I will not be one of these people who makes it sound like Sean Couturier is a plague. He's not. He's right now a 3C. That is, in theory, where Sean Couturier should be right now. Very good guy. Good player. Was once a Selke winner. Had 2 back surgeries. You will not get me to shit on the guy because he is not playing like a 1C. When the Flyers gave him that contract, he did project to be a 1C. Or at the very least, or at the very worst, a really, really, really good 2C. And were it not for the back surgeries, you would probably look at Couturier's cap hit. You'd look at his AAV and say, no, that's actually not a bad deal. But he's slow. I don't think there's anybody who's trying to sell you on the idea that Sean Couturier is a physically better player than people want to give him credit for. He's not. Is he playing well enough? No, he's not. Relative to what his salary is? No, he's not. I will say that 2 back surgeries would definitely qualify as extenuating circumstances. You have to make the best of what you have. He does not actively prevent your team from winning games in a meaningful way. I would argue he's a 3C. Center depth is an issue. I will continue to ask the question. I don't think it's very complicated. Why is Trevor Zegras not allowed to play center? What is the apprehension? How bad could it be? Seriously, how bad could it be? Because if you sort of play this thing out with where the Flyers are in the standings right now, I think the most recent thing that I saw was that in order for the Flyers to comfortably make the playoffs, they would have to go like 18-10-3, something like that, over the rest of the season in order for them to be in a really good spot in the playoffs and in the playoff picture. And if that's the case, I'm not so sure this team could do it. Now, Dan Vladar got activated off IR, so you feel pretty good about that. And if he's able to be the guy that he was, cool. But that game against the Islanders was a 4-point swing. You went from potentially being tied on points and technically the third team in the Met to being on the outside looking in. And don't look now, the Flyers, as of right now, as of Wednesday, are 8 points behind the Boston Bruins. Now, they have 3 games in hand on the Bruins and 2 games in hand over the Canadiens, who also have 65 points. But you are 8 points back in the wild card. It seems like your most feasible path to getting into the playoffs right now would be to finish in the top 3 in the Metropolitan Division. Is that going to happen? I'm not so sure. Do I feel great about it? No, I do not. Flyers have a lot of issues. And the problem that the Flyers have is it's not as if they have a guy who's like waiting in the wings who could step in and be the savior for the team. They don't have that. They don't have a highly touted center prospect that they could just bring into the fold and all of a sudden things fall into place. They don't have a number 1 defenseman in the wings, like a Schefter, like the Islanders have, that they could plug into the lineup and all of a sudden it has a positive cascading effect. They don't have that. The best the Flyers have right now is a guy who has been a career backup who was having a legitimate number 1 goalie kind of season before he got hurt. But I got to ask the question, like, if the entire strategy for making the playoffs is hoping and praying that this guy who had never played more than 31 games in a season, who's largely been a backup, if your hope and your prayer to make the playoffs is that that guy carries you to the playoffs, have you really gotten better? Because I'm not so sure that you have. Like, I was critical of Torts. You're not going to get me to say, oh, that's table based, so much better. If Tortorella had a goalie who played as consistently as Dan Vladar did in the first half of this season, I tend to think that this team would be higher in the standings. I tend to think that the Flyers would probably have a few additional points. I think that there's a non-zero chance that we wouldn't be seeing a Matvei Michkov regression. Call me crazy. Now, I know that there are people who are saying, is Torts a better coach than Tocchet? Historically speaking, you would say probably yes. Tortorella also has benefited tremendously from having some exceptional goalies at his disposal. But if like this first half of the season, Dan Vladar played for the Flyers last year, I would tend to think that the Flyers would have been in a much better position. Make of that what you will. I worry that the unbelievable otherworldly goaltending that they got from Dan Vladar has really covered up a lot of the issues with this team. You know, there's that old adage of putting lipstick on a pig. I'm not saying the Flyers are a pig, but I am saying that they maybe live in a barnyard were it not for Dan Vladar. I mean, to put into context, right? He did have a couple of things that went sideways on him before getting hurt. But like even as of today, he's 11th in the NHL in goals against at 2.46. He's tied for the most wins, I believe, in the NHL, 17th most wins in net. He still has a save percentage over 900, which Flyers goalies have not been able to put together in recent years. I do wonder if there was way too much being put on the shoulders of Dan Vladar. Which leads me to the ultimate question, and it's a thing that I sort of posited the other day. Flyers have to figure out what they're doing right now. Like you cannot wait another month. If you're Danny Briere, you've got to make a very clear, calculated decision. Are we buyers or are we sellers? They don't have a whole lot to sell. Like, I don't actually know what you could try to sell right now or between now and the deadline that's going to help you in any meaningful way, other than to lower the ceiling, lower the floor. If a team comes calling about Owen Tippett, do you have a conversation? Maybe. Depends on who it is. If a team comes calling about Porter Martone, do you have a conversation? You have a conversation. You likely still walk away and say absolutely not. I mean, let's not forget, Flyers did not want to trade Porter Martone as part of a package for Quinn Hughes. Well, if you weren't willing to part with Porter Martone for one of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League, I tend to think you're not going to be willing to move Porter Martone for just any jamoke who becomes available on the trade market. Are teams going to call about Bobby Brink? I can't imagine so. And if they do, it's not going to be a very valuable asset coming back. Are teams going to call about Travis Sanheim? No. I can't imagine they would. He also has a full no movement clause. I don't think Travis Sanheim's going anywhere. Could teams call about Travis Konechny? I don't think they would right now. If Konechny goes on a heater, is there a chance that a team could pick up the phone and call you about Travis Konechny? Maybe. Do I think this team would move him? Absolutely not. So I don't know how the Flyers could be sellers. Christian Dvorak was probably your most valuable, sellable piece. And you signed him for 5 years. Bold strategy. What was my complaint at the time? You haven't seen him and Zegras split up. You don't actually know if Dvorak was just massively benefiting from playing with Zegras or if he was on his own just having a career year. I still don't think you have a totally clear picture on where that falls. You still haven't re-signed Trevor Zegras. Now, it seems like the team wants to bring him back. It seems like the player wants to be back, and he's going to be a restricted free agent, so chances are he will be back, but he remains unsigned. So for all the people who are saying, sell, 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 my simple question is, what exactly are you selling? And to whom are you selling these assorted misfit toys? Because from where I'm standing, I don't see a whole lot of attractive assets to sell. On the flip side, if you are the Flyers, do you buy? What are you buying? And is it a long-term piece or a rental? Because to my knowledge, Danny Briere's been pretty opposed to the idea of going out and just getting a half-season rental, going out and pick up a guy who's like 33, 34 years old, just for the sake of trying to push the team closer to the playoffs. I don't see that happening. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be wrong. So if the Flyers can't sell because there's nothing to sell, and if the Flyers aren't really going to buy because there's not a lot to buy and the prices are going to be prohibitive, then what exactly are the Flyers? If you can't buy and you can't sell, and you are a mediocre at best team when you don't have a career backup playing like a top 10 goalie in the league, what exactly are you? You are a team stuck in hockey purgatory. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that's exactly where this franchise has been for the better part of a decade. It doesn't matter if Danny Briere's the GM, or Chuck Fletcher's the GM, or Ron Hextall's the GM. It doesn't matter if the idea was to tear it down like Hextall wanted to do. It doesn't matter if it was to patchwork things like Chuck Fletcher wanted. It doesn't matter if you were going to commit to a rebuild publicly like Briere did. The results essentially are still going to be about the same. Right now, the Flyers are hurtling toward hockey purgatory. The only hope they have right now is that a career backup goalie who played like a top 10 goalie the first half of the season is somehow going to lift them on his shoulders and carry them into the playoffs. That's it. That is the only feasible way to make the playoffs. And yet, the team is mediocre enough and not totally bad enough that even if Vladar comes back and is human, they are not going to be able to catch up racing to the bottom. Which means that the Flyers once again find themselves in hockey purgatory. Now, where do I land? I would like to see a playoff run. I genuinely would. But I also thought that this team was in a better position to avoid hockey purgatory. I thought that they had gotten over this hump. And it doesn't appear that they have. Now, if Vladar comes back and the team plays better in front of him and they go on a run, okay. But if the bottom falls out, the bottom's really got to fall out. Now, we've been talking all year about parity in the league. To give you an idea, as of January 28th, the year of our Lord 2026, the Flyers have 57 points on the season in 51 games. That is the same amount of points that the Washington Capitals have, 57 points. Now, the Capitals have played 54 games, so the Flyers have 3 games in hand. If the Flyers were to go into a funk, into an extended rut, could they end up somewhere in that top 8? Yes. Do I see a scenario where the Flyers are able to race to the bottom and make up an 18-point gap with the Canucks to get the number one best odds of getting the number one overall pick? Absolutely not. Where this thing could ultimately land is if the Flyers were to really have the bottom fall out. They will be in with a hodgepodge of 12 other teams or so that are probably going to be separated by about 5 points at the end of the year. And we will all collectively hold our breath that the Flyers somehow end up somewhere in the top 5, top 6 best odds to get the number one overall pick. I say this every year. You just want to make sure that you are jump proof to some extent. You know, you might not get the number one overall pick. The thought has always been if you have the best odds of getting the number one overall pick, the most you can get leapfrogged is twice. And then you end up with the number 3 pick. If you finish the season with the 5th best odds of getting the number one overall pick, the worst you could finish is 7th. 2 teams could theoretically jump you, and you could finish in 7th. If you're the Flyers and you finish in, let's say, 13th, well, you could get jumped twice. You could. If you're 13th, that means you would pick at 15. And if you finish in 13th, guess what? The best you could do is jump 10 spots, which means you would pick 3rd, which would be a hell of a win. But teams jumping 10 spots doesn't happen much. That's why last year when it happened with the Islanders, it felt like an absolutely insane occurrence. It doesn't happen very often. All of this is to say, I am deeply concerned about the Philadelphia Flyers. And I am disappointed that we are 51 games into a season and the Flyers are still hovering in that hockey purgatory phase. And it just doesn't feel like they're going to get a declarative decision either way. That they're going to go on a heater and make the playoffs, or that the bottom is going to truly fall out and they're going to end up somewhere in that 7th, 8th best odds of getting the number one overall pick. Which means that if things remain the same, you will probably look at the Flyers picking somewhere between 14 and 16. And that is not where you find generational talent. And that is where you end up having to hope that your scouts are right and that you don't end up passing on, Steve Bouillon for Jet Lachenko. Okay. There's the Flyers. We talked about the Flyers. I see a lot of comments over in the comments section. I appreciate each and every one of you. I don't think I can get to all of your comments right now. And I did see, by the way, Amadeo said that apparently they are raising the ticket prices for the Flyers this year. They're raising season ticket prices. Okay. They stayed even for a while, and now they're raising season ticket prices. This is probably not the best time to announce that you're raising season ticket prices after getting mollywopped by the Islanders on Monday. But, I'm just a guy. I just talk into a microphone. What do I know? Cool. All right. That's the Flyers. We talk Sixers. We talk Flyers. Really quickly, very brief thing to touch on here for a minute. Christopher Sanchez apparently has kind of gone back on what he was going to do. Originally, he said he wouldn't pitch in the World Baseball Classic. He is going to be pitching for the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic. That news broke yesterday, so I don't know how to feel about it. Aaron Nola is going to pitch for Italy. Now Christopher Sanchez is pitching for the Dominican Republic. I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing in the world. I do worry just about meaningful innings being thrown. And the one thing the Phillies cannot have happen is an injury to Christopher Sanchez. It would be catastrophic, which leads me to the conversation I had the other night with somebody who will remain nameless but is named Anthony Sanfilippo about how I think that the Phillies are a worse team going into this season than they were last year. And I don't even think it's really up for debate, but apparently there's at least one person on this earth who thinks that it is up for debate. So I just want to do a really quick side-by-side of the teams as currently constructed. Something can happen. Maybe Dave Dombrowski's going to go out and make a really big, impactful trade before the season, and he's going to make the team better. He's not. So just to recap, last year, you had a rotation that featured Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, Aaron Nola. And then you were kind of in flux about the fifth. Was it going to be Taijuan Walker or whatever? Okay, so you had that. This season, you've allowed Ranger Suarez to leave. Zach Wheeler remains out due to complications with thoracic outlet syndrome. So your rotation right now is Christopher Sanchez, Aaron Nola, Andrew Painter. Some question marks. Now, eventually, Wheeler's going to be back. So eventually you could have Wheeler, Sanchez, Nola, Painter. I don't know. Okay. The Phillies clearly believed that long-term they needed another answer. Hence, they gave a very big offer to Yamamoto, who chose to not sign here. They let Suarez leave. Framber Valdez, I think, unless he signed in like the last 36 hours, is still available, although I don't see that happening. So the rotation is worse, right? Rotation's worse. The bullpen might be better. The bullpen going into the year is definitely better. Duran entering this season versus what they had last year automatically means the bullpen is better. So good job to the Phillies. The bullpen is better. The lineup. You replace Bryce Harper with Bryce Harper. You replace Kyle Schwarber with Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto with JT Realmuto, Bryson Stott with Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm with Alec Boehm. Nick Castellanos, in theory, you've replaced with Garcia. Castellanos is still on the roster because the Phillies screwed this thing up at the end of the season, pretty much saying, somebody please just take this guy off our hands. It hasn't happened yet. So Castellanos is still there, but been replaced by Garcia. In center field, you're going to have Justin Crawford, which maybe will work, maybe won't. I have no idea. And then you have Marsh. Now, Harrison Bader just signed with the Giants, so any dream that you might have had about Bader being back is now gone. The most interesting thing is Bader was asked about his time in Philly. He raved about being a Philly. He was only in Philadelphia for like 2 months, 2.5 months. Raved about the fans, raved about the organization, about the people, about the coach, about the front office. And then said, honestly, I don't really know why I'm not back there. That's a pretty wild thing for a player to say. He just signed with the Giants for around $10 million a year, if I remember correctly. The Phillies signed Garcia for about $10 million. But Bader was asked about his time in Philly, and he goes, I don't actually know why I'm not back there. Is that concerning to anybody? Okay. I find it slightly concerning, but I'm just a guy. So the lineup is really no better. The rotation is objectively worse. The bullpen might be a little bit better. How exactly are the Phillies as good or better than they were a year ago? There we go. Thank you, Wyatt. He is correct. Jesus Luzardo. I did forget about Luzardo. I should never forget about Luzardo again. Good call. Thank you, Wyatt. Luzardo. We do like Luzardo. Okay. So you have Sanchez and Luzardo and Nola and Painter and question mark. Okay. Makes you feel a little bit better. How did I forget about Jesus Luzardo? I'm an idiot. I make mistakes. Okay. How is this team better? They're not. Have the Dodgers gotten better? They have. Have the Mets gotten better? They have. Okay, cool. Good talk, everybody. Good talk. 2 other things really quick before we head out. One. Adam Schefter went on to 97.5's morning show and hinted that there's a big change coming, and I need to know what the change is. We're going to throw out here really quickly because we got to get going. We're going to throw really quickly to a clip from 97.5, the Fanatics morning show. Adam Schefter was asked about the changes because I don't know if you saw this. Todd Monken signed with the Browns as their head coach. He did not follow John Harbaugh to the Giants. So now Monken is off the list, although I don't think he was really ever in consideration here. And we know that top candidates have chosen to not bring their services to Philadelphia, which is problematic. I want you to listen to Schefter. Schefter definitely hinted that something big is coming. Let's go out to Adam Schefter.
Appreciate the time, man.
Thanks,
and we'll talk to you next week. Maybe reacting to an OC hired in Philadelphia. Maybe the smoke will come out of NovaCare. We'll find out soon.
And maybe there'll be even more than that by next week.
Yeah. Will A.J. Brown be traded?
No.
Well, more than that.
We didn't ask you this
Wait a minute.
week.
More than that. What are you hinting at?
Maybe there'll be even more than discussion than an offensive coordinator. We'll see.
All
We'll see
right.
what happens here the next week.
Antenna-
I'm liking this.
This is
antennas
the
are
part
up,
where you
Schefter.
have-
Antennas
this is
are
the
up.
part where you
Thanks,
have a
man.
good
We'll talk to you
follow-up.
next week.
And then you say,
Thanks, guys.
thanks, we'll talk to you next week. Hello. How about a little follow-up there? What does more conversation have to... Are we talking about a new stadium? Are we talking about a Fangio retirement? Are we talking about a Stoutland retirement? Are we talking potentially about a new head coach? I mean, let me ask you a question here really quick. Do we think that there's a chance that Nick Sirianni is going to be let go as head coach? I think if he were going to, it would have happened already. They've interviewed a bunch of guys for offensive coordinator. Ross Tucker was over on WIP's morning show today, and he said they're essentially getting free consulting when it comes to offensive coordinator. I just have a lot of questions. I have no answers. I do want to know, though, like, what exactly does more coming out of NovaCare mean next week? Could it be the head coach? I'm not sure. Here's one thing I am sure of. This is the last thing for today. Bill Belichick not getting elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame is nonsense. I get that Spygate happened. I get that Deflategate happened. I am not a Bill Belichick fan by any stretch of the imagination. But a man who has won as many Super Bowls as Bill Belichick did, not getting into the Hall of Fame feels absolutely ludicrous. And one of the wildest, weirdest things to come out of this is there is a belief that Bill Polian, who was previously an executive with the Colts and others, and was a key rival to Belichick's Patriots, that Polian might have been in some way, shape, or form responsible for a smear campaign against Belichick, trying to convince other voters to keep him out because of the cheating scandals. And this is the wildest part, and this just came out a couple hours ago. Polian had initially pushed back on this narrative that he was anti-Belichick. He was asked if he voted for Bill Belichick for the Hall of Fame, and he said he, quote, could not remember with 100% certainty, end quote, if he voted for Bill Belichick as a Hall of Famer. If you believe that I don't quite recall if I voted for Mr. Belichick for the Hall of Fame. If you believe that, you will believe anything. That is insane. Again, it's entirely possible that Bill Belichick cheated his way through a Super Bowl that cost the Philadelphia Eagles the first Super Bowl in their franchise's history that could have fundamentally altered whether or not Terrell Owens stays as a Philadelphia Eagle. And yet I have to look at it and say, Belichick is one of the greatest coaches of all time. He could potentially be considered by many the best football coach of all time. He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Interesting. I think it's an absolute sham and a joke, but I'm just a guy. All right, I'll be back on Friday here at the Russ Joy Show. Don't forget, if you are in the Malvern area on Wednesday night, 6 o'clock, we will be at the Chickies and Pete's in Malvern. Come on out, talk some puck. Until then, you can catch up on this show on YouTube, Facebook, X. You can find it in the podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. I will be back on Friday here with the Russ Joy Show. Until then, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and that's also the name of the show. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everybody. I'll talk to you on a fantastic Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.